Good morning. Dwayne here, Dry Creek Wrangler School. As you can see, and as you can guess, I'm doing a video this morning on rifles on horseback. I did a video, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, handguns on horseback. Got a lot of good feedback on that. Got a lot of requests to do one on rifles. Now, I've touched on this subject 2 or 3 times, but we'll cover it again today, and we'll go into more detail. Now, I've brought out all of my rifles, and I don't have that many rifles, but I brought out all of mine. And what I'm going to be talking about today is my experience and what works for me. Now, I want to make sure that everybody understands right up front. This is not a FUD video. This is not a video about this is the only thing that works and your way's not necessary. Not at all. Whatever rifle you carry on horseback, whatever rifle you hunt, it works for you. It's all great and it's all good. But I just talk about my experience and the things I have learned and what works for me. And if you get just some entertainment out of this, or you get a little bit of information, then great. Okay. So, but the focus of this is hunting on horseback. Now, I have found there are things that I like that work well for me on horseback, and there are things that I do not like that do not work for me. Now, on horseback, I carry lever action rifles. All right, I think they have some advantages for being on a horse and for the way I hunt that other rifles don't have. Now, I have 3 different lever action rifles. I have one in 44 mag, and I have 2 in 45-70. Now, all these have been cleared. Okay, so in the 44 mag, in the lever action in this Winchester, I've got a 44 Magnum. Okay, if you watched my handguns on horseback video, I've got a number of single action 44 mags, all the way from a 3 3/4 inch barrel to a 7.5 inch barrel. And I like the 44 Magnum round. Now, when I was in Alaska, I used to carry the 454 Casull loaded up with hot bear loads. But the recoil just got to be a bit more than I wanted to handle, so I moved back down to the 44. And I like the 44 because I can do, there's a big variety. I can do several different loads, all the way up to hot loads in the 44 Magnum, or I can load it down and shoot 44 specials out of it. And so I have this for when I'm not in big grizzly country. Okay, now the advantages for me of the lever action over, say, a bolt action rifle, or today's AR platforms, is it's very slim and it's flat. There's no bolt sticking off. It's just very slim. It lends itself very well to come in and put in a saddle scabbard and tie to your horse and come in quiet under your leg. This one holds 11 or 12 plus 1. So that's more ammunition than normally I'm going to need, but I don't ever feel like I don't have enough ammunition with it, so I can carry it in the rifle, as opposed to your average bolt action. You've got 3 rounds, and then you've got to have these other rounds about your person just in case of reloads and follow-up shots. I went bear hunting with a fellow in Alaska. He went stalking on a bear we saw out there, and he had his bolt action rifle, and he got out there and he shot the bear, and he hit it all 3 times, but that bear was not going down, and all he had was the 3 shots there in the rifle. He forgot to take a reload bandolier or something with him out there, so all he had was the 3 shots in a rifle. If in emergency I just grab up my rifle and take off, I know I have more ammunition. But for me, in the backcountry, I really like the narrowness, the flatness, the smoothness of it, the easy to carry on horseback. Now, I also have in 45-70, I have the Browning. In a lever action, I have the Browning in the 45-70 as well. These actions are incredibly smooth. Let's talk about the difference between a Winchester and a Marlin. You're fixing to get your first lever action rifle for hunting, regardless of the caliber, and you're kind of waffling back and forth between a Winchester and a Marlin, and maybe in a Henry. They make good rifles. Well, your Winchester with these double lugs, especially in your larger calibers, they're incredibly strong, very smooth actions, but they have a couple of disadvantages. To me, the Marlin has a couple of advantages over them. One is the Marlin, it's very easy to add back sights back here. Now some people they'll put one here or change that one out. But to get a good back sight, way back close to the eye, so that you're further distance from the front sight, it's harder to do on a Winchester. It can be done, but it takes drilling and tapping, buying Skinner sights or something like that, which is all very doable. But to me, that's not an advantage. This top is not an advantage. The other thing for me that's not an advantage, the internal workings of the Winchester are much more complicated. They're than the Marlin. They're harder to take apart. They have a lot more parts. It's harder to clean them in depth if you've got a hunting season in a rough area of climate and mud and stuff. They're wonderful rifles, and I love them, and that's why I have two of them. But there's just a couple of things that they're a little bit check marks below the Marlin on that. Now, the new Marlin, and I did a video on this a while back when I picked it up. The new Marlin made by Ruger, it's an excellent made rifle. Now, as you can see with this rifle, it's easy, and even on one that doesn't come with a Picatinny rail, it's easy to put a back sight back here at the back, where your eye is, where most of us want it. And I have found over the years that the Marlin action is much easier to take apart, much easier to clean. I'm not a mechanical kind of guy. Lower that hammer down. I'm not a mechanical kind of guy, and my eyes are getting worse, and my hands are getting stiff and arthritic, and a lot of little tiny pieces and a lot of complexity. I don't care for. So now, with this Marlin with this rail on it, I have a Leupold scope. Now, if I'm out hunting, if I'm carrying this on horseback, this goes in my backpack or in a saddlebag. It's not on the rifle. But if I get somewhere where the shot is a little bit longer than I'm comfortable with open irons, I have this sighted in with quick disconnect rings, and I can just pop that on there and use it. And I'm not ashamed. I'm getting older, and we just make adjustments as we need to make adjustments, okay? So it's got a lot of flexibility. Now, one of the things about a lever action rifle versus a bolt action rifle is the lever action rifle will not be as accurate as a bolt action rifle, okay? And so guys who say, no, I take a bolt action because of accuracy, that's viable. It's not viable for me because I don't shoot long distance. I've taken, a lot of time and did a 400-yard stalk on caribou in Alaska, on the Alaska Peninsula, which is just open and rolling flat, no trees. I love to stalk, and I love to take my time in the stalk and to get up and take a 400 or 500-yard shot and belly crawl behind bushes and around everything and get up within 50 to 75 yards. All right, I love doing that. You say, Dwayne, do you still belly crawl at your age and stiffness? I tell you what, I'd rather belly crawl at my age and stiffness and stalk up close than I would to have to run 500 miles to where I bungled a shot just to get to where that game departed from to run off to make a follow-up shot. And it's that much further to pack it back to the four-wheeler or wherever. I like to shoot close. I like to spot and stalk. I've taken, I don't know, I've lost count, 5 or 6 caribou, a grizzly in Alaska, and a bull moose. There was one caribou I shot. It was probably 125 yards away. Just about everything else has been within 60 yards or less. And so the bolt action long range thing is not, that's not a factor for me. And if you say, well, Dwayne, I shoot bighorn sheep, I shoot this, I shoot that. I get it, okay? It's great. Carry what works for you. Although I will say that I know guys myself who've taken everything on this planet with a pistol, including bighorn sheep. Okay, so stalking is viable wherever you're at, but you hunt the way you hunt and it works, and it's all good, clean hunting. But for me, I'm just saying the long range is not a factor for me. If it's that far out there, if I can't get to it, then that one got away today. If I can't see where it's going and head down the drainage and get around in front of it, it got away today, which is fine. So anyhow, that is that. Now, I only have one bolt action rifle, and we are not carrying this on horseback. This rifle with the scope weighs close to 14 pounds, all right? This is a Ruger RSM, Ruger Safari Magnum in 416 Rigby with a Leupold dangerous game scope on it. I've got this set up. Twice now I've tried to go back to Africa and do a hunt over there. And so that's what this is. If I'm going to have a bolt, this is just me, if I'm going to have a bolt action, and I've looked at a couple others in much smaller calibers lately, just because what if. I like the Mauser action. All right, this one's a full controlled feed, if you know what that means. It's not necessary, but I prefer it. The 3-position safety. But this is not a rifle that I have bought a scabbard for and hung on a horse and headed out. I don't need this rifle out here in this country. And so this is not an option. All right, but for some of you, they do make scabbards for this rifle. If you've got something of this size, something of this nature, that goes on horseback, and it's fine. And then my last rifle is I've got a Shiloh Sharps in 4570. Now the Shiloh Sharps is single shot, but that's got a couple advantages. Of course, again, this one, like the Winchester, is very smooth. It lends itself very well to carrying on horseback. Now, if you take this rifle, now this is just trivia, okay? And you have the same length barrel on this rifle that you do on a different rifle, but the action is only this long. Your rifle is much shorter with the same length barrel. Lends itself very well to horseback. Not only that, but I know from experience, when you start shooting a single shot rifle, you take more time and you are more careful with your shots. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, it's got a cool factor of like 12.5. And my son, Jesse, who was working for an elk hunting outfit last year and the year before, up in Idaho, in the mountains of Idaho, he's got one a lot like this, and that was his saddle rifle. He carried a 4570 Sharps. And he killed a bear with it. I mean, it's a 4570. They're incredibly accurate. The weakness on these guns is the shooter. The gun has no weakness. It's not going to jam, okay? It's not going to blow up. It's incredibly accurate, but it's only as good as the shooter, who actually takes his time and goes out and shoots and gets to know the rifle. I had a different one a lot like this several years ago in Kansas, and I shot black powder cartridge NRA competition with it. And I came in third in my division where I was at, 500 meters, and I did not have double set trigger, and I did not have all the fancy sights they had on, but what I had was there for several years when I was on that Alaska Peninsula, this is what I carried. This was my everyday hunt. Not this one, but the one just like it, made by Shiloh Sharps, exact same company. It rode up in the over the handlebars of my four-wheeler. It's what I shot everything with. I carried it everywhere. I shot it all the time. And I knew that rifle. I knew that rifle like an old friend. And so when it came to go do competition with these Sharps that had 34-inch barrels and spirit level bubble front sights and double set triggers, I walked right in amongst them and did quite well. Thank you very much. Because there is no substitution for knowing your weapon. There's no substitution for knowing your weapon. And there are some rifles that have some disadvantages. Again, the bulk and the weight of a bolt rifle, some would look at it as a disadvantage. But many quote unquote disadvantages can be overcome with familiarity and skill. Okay, so this is what I carry when I'm on horseback. This is why I choose these. They've done tests, you know, some of the questions I've seen on forums about, oh, so let me tell you a story. All right, this is important. All right, I was bear hunting out of Talkeetna, Alaska. I had a tag and a license and everything. And I was bear hunting and I was by myself, which probably wasn't the smartest thing. And I heard a bear woofing off in the trees. And so I'm slipping down, and I don't want to rake anybody, but I'm slipping down and I'm carrying in port arms. And I've got one loaded, I've got one in the chamber, I've got one in the tube with this. And this grizzly comes charging about 50 yards away, not charging at me. And charging is not accurate. She was running, she was loping out from the trees about 50 yards in front of me, teeing across. And when she got directly in line with me, she skidded to a stop and turned around and looked right at me, right in the eyes. And I had a split second decision to make. And I was hunting grizzly bear, but I wasn't hunting that particular one. And but if she started charging me, my odds would go down. And it was that time of season, a lot of people were getting charged. And so I whipped the rifle, upside it in, and shot. And she hit the ground. I mean, it just turned her lights out immediately. And I was 45-70 Marlin that had been completely customized and tricked out by Wild West Guns there in Anchorage. And so I thought, well, shoot, man, there was nothing to that. And then all of a sudden I heard, whoa, whoa, whoa. And another one that, if anything, was bigger than her, come bounding out of the woods to where she was. Well, I immediately racked a new round in and then pulled off my belt, pulled around and put in here, so I topped off, okay? And then while I'm standing there, again, I'm up poor arms, I hear whoa, 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 and a third one comes bounding out. And these were probably 600-pound bears. They weren't giant grizzlies, but if you've ever been out there with a grizzly, a giant grizzly any grizzly doesn't have to be a giant grizzly to take the wind out of your sail, especially if you're by yourself and there's 3 of them. The one was down. My point is, and I know Henry makes side gates now, if you're going to be in that kind of country, always make sure your rifle has the side gate on it, not the tube feed, okay? I would have been in very great distress in that situation if I had to do this and take that cap off, unwind it, pull it up, open that, pull out here, drop that in there, drop that in there, while I'm in a very bad situation, okay? And so, but I had my tube, and so I pulled it out, stuck it in, topped everything off, backed up against a tree so I could see my peripherals, and waited to see what. And they wolfed around there for a while, and then eventually they wandered off. A lot of bears back then. We had 9 encounters in 2 days. We were on a stream that was coming right out of a lake, and there were fish guts and fish heads and everything everywhere. So, but anyhow, I wanted to throw that in. If you get a Marlin, get a modern Marlin that has a side gate. Do not get the tube feed. Okay, I don't recommend that. Anyhow, I guess that's about enough. I don't think I got anything else to impart to you, except for when you get a rifle, get a lot of ammunition and shoot it, and shoot it, and shoot it, and shoot it. Short distance, long distance, all terrain. Know that rifle. Know that rifle very well. And if you say, Dwayne, well, what I've got is I've got a semi-auto 30-06. Can't afford something else. Just shoot it. Shoot it. And Dwayne, I've got a AR and 458. You know, shoot it. Get to know it. Find what works for you, and get to know it. All right. So anyhow, I hope there's a little something here that you found interesting. Maybe I hope there's a little something here you're like, I didn't know that, I didn't realize that, and you picked up a little bit of information. And other than that, happy riding, happy shooting, happy hunting, and we'll catch you guys next time.